with the crowd.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I don't care if I never get...
Holy cow!
Baby water! Baby water!
You are now listening to On Deck with your host, Josh Smith.
Conference Championship weekend in the NFL. We'll get to those games in just a few moments. Of course, last week's games, was it a catch, wasn't a catch? That's one of the biggest talks in the NFL. The coaching carousel as well, and the NCAA title game. Got to talk about that. Some Cardale Jones coming up here in just a little bit. And certainly last but not least, cannot forget the story of the week. Each and every week, I will bring you something cute, funny, interesting, something of that sort in the entertainment or sports realm. I cannot wait for today's story. Thanks for listening. This is On Deck. I am Josh Smith, your host. Let's get to today's topics. First, on deck, we have last night's big games. It was Championship Sunday for the AFC, NFC, and the NFL. Great games to be decided upon, as we thought we were going to get two good games. But we did get one. One game was a blowout, which I certainly predicted and thought was going to happen. The other, though, let's get straight to it. First game of the day, the Packers at the Seahawks. It was a great game. Nothing like the first game of the year. And it was a very interesting game. The Packers left, it seemed like, a lot of points on the board there in the first half. Could have maybe had a bigger lead than they had going into a 16-0 lead at the halftime. Russell Wilson, it seemed like pick after pick, thus throwing 4 interceptions on the game. But they kind of seemed to find their groove in the second half. I shouldn't say groove, but enough of a groove. And the Packers just didn't really do much with it. Even with him still throwing interceptions, which leads me to one of the big topics of the game, the Burnett interception where he just slides down, and when they show the all-22, as they call it, video of that play, the only person that looked like they may have had a chance if he kept continuing down that left sideline was going to be Russell Wilson, and that's it, which he was going to have blockers to block Russell Wilson. So he could have most likely had a pick 6 on that play. So there was that, and even after that, there was 5 minutes left. They were up 19-7. It looked like the game was over, and that's why Julius Peppers told him to slide down. He was trying to tell you the game's over. You could almost tell they were celebrating after that on the field right there. You know, the two guys that kind of tell Julius Peppers and Burnett were kind of, almost congratulating each other. Like, hey, it's over. We've got this. It's in the bag. That, and almost kind of like the Bronco-Colts game from the week before, when the Broncos got the ball back multiple times, you almost were like, well, they're not going to do anything with the ball anyway. They haven't done anything all game. Game over. Well, sure enough, that started what ended up being just crazy play after crazy play. Really, I guess you could call it. The fake field goal was the first one for a touchdown, where the kicker kind of scrambled out and just throws some kind of lob pass, albeit it was beautiful, to a lineman who does catch it and scores a touchdown, which leads to the Burnett interception where he just slides down and does not return it. What could have been at least gotten into field goal range, certainly. Then leads to a total of 5 turnovers in the game, and the first team ever since 1981 to win a game in the playoffs after throwing 4 interceptions. I mean, the onside kick, Bostic, right through Bostic's hands. Seattle does get the ball back, does go down, scores the touchdown to take a 1-point lead. Well, that's great and all. But here's even just something cap it all off on top of it all. The 2-point conversion. To go up by 3, Russell Wilson scrambling around for his life, throws up a Hail Mary from the 15-yard line, and comes down with it is another Wilson. So, Wilson to Wilson for the 2-point conversion. I was stunned as anyone could have been, just going, what's not going to go their way? Well, obviously, it's just going to continue to go their way. The Packers luckily had all 3 timeouts and really didn't use them. I think they could have saved more seconds, my point being, too effectively on that drive, although they did drive right down the field. They got the field goal and went into overtime. And now that's going to be the new controversy, which it has kind of already been that way. Why do you not just give both teams at least one chance? Even if it is a touchdown, that shouldn't just end the game. The other team should still get a chance to score. The Packers didn't. Aaron Rodgers didn't even get a chance to touch the ball in overtime. The game was over. But from the fake field goal to the interception where Burnett slides down for the Packers and doesn't try to return it, there's a minute left. You do that. 5 minutes left in the game, Yeah, only reason you do that with 5 minutes left in the game is you're up 30 or 40, not up 19-7. Then the onside kick, right through the Packers' hands of Bostic to the 2-point conversion. It was bound and determined the Seahawks were going to win that one. So that leads to the next game. And it was very similar to earlier in the year where the Patriots destroyed the Colts, but even in more fashion this time, beat them 45-7, thus using that new trickery formation that you've been using with extra linemen, who's eligible, who's not. It was just a blowout from start to finish. Not much to really go over there. The Patriots have been on a roll and just really do what they need to do to win a game. What's funny is I was watching SportsCenter, as anyone does, just kind of gathering all my information throughout the day, as I always gather stuff on different channels. My one session of SportsCenter, because it is a repeat all over and over. So I had my one session of SportsCenter. During that session, I forgot which anchor it was, and if I should have wrote it down, but I didn't want to give his name away. I would love to be in his position. I would love to have his job. Anyway, he said he sees the Super Bowl being a lot like last year's. And the anchor next to him looks over and says, really? The blowout between Denver and Seattle? He says, yeah. He said, because he wanted to confirm, he thought Seattle was going to do the blowing out. And it just stunned me. I'm like, no. How could you come away with it? The Patriots just scored 30, and that was the thing. He said that the Patriots are going to struggle against the Seahawks scoring. He said, I can see the Patriots having a struggle in the scoring department. Having a hard time trying to score, obviously, against the Seahawks defense. Which, okay, the last 6 games of the year, regular season, the Seahawks are, only averaging giving up 8 to 9 points per game. I can see that. Here in the playoffs, they've given up a little bit more points into teams that don't have near the experience, and I shouldn't say offensive explosiveness that the Patriots have, but they have that explosiveness. You wouldn't think that because of their personnel. They don't have big-name players besides Brady and Gronkowski, but they just put up 45 against the Colts. They put up 35-38 last week against the Ravens. 2 pretty good defenses that they average about right around 40 points per game in those 2 contests. Yeah, I don't think they're going to have trouble scoring if they don't need to. As I'll get to later, they pretty much find a way to win and do what they need to do. If they need to run it 30 times or need to pass it 40 times, they'll do that to win and do it successfully as of late. So I didn't get that SportsCenter anchor, his comment about how it's going to be like last year's Super Bowl and how the Seahawks were going to destroy them and it was going to be a struggle for the Patriots to score. I don't see how that is even in the realm right now. But albeit, you saw what happened last year. No one at all thought the Broncos were going to have any time, not that much of a trouble scoring as they did, but boy did they. So we'll see what happens. With many other topics to break down, we'll get to the Super Bowl preview in next week's podcast, and it certainly will be a great game to look forward to. Many people, I'm sure, will be looking forward to that matchup. Broncos last week, Peyton Manning, what is going on there? Of course, we all knew something was going on with Peyton. Was he injured? Wasn't he injured? Yes, we come out with a torn quad the day after on Monday, and then we come out to find out that maybe he had another injury earlier in the year in the other San Diego game and injured his other quad. So I couldn't imagine playing with 2 hurt quads, especially one torn when the injury report came out as well in the last week, that his quad was not only bruised from the front part but all the way to the back. So pretty much imagine your upper leg bruised all the way around. Just a whole black and blue leg. I couldn't imagine playing in the NFL, almost 40 years old, getting hit by 300-pound linemen. Certainly would not feel good. I could not imagine. Of course, you would figure, though, too, on top of the fact, watching all the games that I watched, Peyton, out of all the years, they always say he puts you in the best situation to win. He'll find the best matchup. But I've seen time and time again where he'll even force it in there. He might have someone else open, but he's going to that matchup that he just loves so much. And, of course, it seems like over the years he's just done that, kind of progressed to that kind of a quarterback, but he still makes the throw, and sometimes it may look like a dead duck, but he gets it where he needs to go. So back to last Sunday, the game against the Colts. The Broncos come out, and they choose to let the Colts receive, which that's great. That's what you think they would want to do. So they receive in the second half, maybe get a lead, then build on top of it. Well, their plan went to work. It went pretty much, so to speak, as they wanted it to. The plan did at the beginning. The Colts went 3 and out. The Broncos force them to punt. They get the ball, come right down the field. Peyton was 3 of 3 with a touchdown on the drive. They go up 7-0. And what I want to get to that drive right down the sideline and get the key ingredient back, or one of them, Julius, back, one of his main targets, with an out and up route, a wheel route, where he fakes the out route down the sideline and then he goes up the sideline. Wide open, Peyton hits him in stride, perfect little floater to the 1 yard line. And this is what I really want to get to. In years previous, this is what they would have done from the two, because it's so automatic. Down set hut, I'm going to throw a fade to Demaryius Thomas or Julius Thomas because their size advantage over who's defending them is too great. They're going to catch it with my accuracy, touchdown. It's almost as good as a run. You would think, though, with the Broncos, the way they had been running the ball lately with C.J. Anderson, they're just going to run it from the 1 or 2. No, Peyton wants to show his accuracy, and that's what I thought watching it. Okay, Peyton wants to show he can throw it from the 1 or 2 even. Throws it to Demaryius Thomas. They get a touchdown. Touchdown Broncos. They're up 7-0. So you're like, okay, Peyton's come to play. The Broncos have come to play. They're going to show they're out to win a Super Bowl this year. Even though they've kind of stuttered at times this year, they're out to show in the playoffs. They're recuperated. They're healthy. They're ready to roll. Not so fast, my friend. And as I said earlier about the injuries, of course, maybe both of them being hurt, I think thus, in the end, hurt his decision-making. Although I don't understand it, yes, his no arm strength. They kept saying that we had no arm strength. That really hurt him. Well, why are you throwing down the sideline anyway? Those people weren't open. A couple times they were. One specifically to Emmanuel Sanders where he overthrew him and would have got it to him. Emmanuel would have caught it. Yes, a safety was coming over, but Emmanuel would have caught it. It would have been a 1st and goal. But Peyton overthrew him. And that's what they kept saying. And Phil Simms was on a show. I was listening to Sirius XM the next day. I forgot what show he was a guest on, and that's what he was saying. It led to his indecision, his bad decision-making, where he literally didn't want to get hit, so he's going to force his throws immediately down the sideline, even though if they're not open. He thinks they're going to they will be open a lot of the time. If not, they're going to make a play on the ball if I can get it to him. But he couldn't get it to him. His throws were overthrown because he's throwing it too soon, because he's too scared to get hit, which, as I said, did affect his decision-making. He had people underneath all night long. Specifically, that throw to Emmanuel Sanders, which could have been a 1st and goal, yes, if he put it on the money, but he had Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker open on underneath routes. Thus leading me, okay, if you don't have the arm strength and you know that going into this game, why aren't you going with shorter underneath routes? Remember those rub routes? Remember the AFC Championship game last year when, a player that plays for the Broncos now, Aqib Talib, got hurt on a rub route, specifically with Wes Welker, a former Patriot, as well. What happened to those rub routes? Where were those at in this game? Where were underneath routes where you can get people specifically open 5 to 10 yards down the field? Because I'm pretty sure, I think that was the only one that he completed down the sideline to Julius on that first drive that was over 10 yards, or maybe 15 or 20. I forgot what the stat was. But he was horrendous, and that was one of the only ones. So where are these underneath routes? And also, third quarter, 13:50 to play. They just got the ball. They're at the 25-yard line, 3rd and 5. He forces a throw down the sideline. If you remember this, when he was rolling out during the game, he was rolling out, and even Phil Simms said, I don't know why he didn't run for that. Even he said that. People were texting me like, man, is he getting paid? I don't know what was going on, because no, he's not getting paid. He's got plenty of money. But he rolls out to the right. If you do remember this, ESPN shows their camera from behind, that cool little camera they have where they show it on the play, where it's on the field, and they kind of go with the player. But anyway, rolls out, Peyton does, gets wide open. Luckily, the guys that were even getting close to maybe even touching him, number 91 and number 52 for the Colts, if you go back and look at the replay, actually trip on each other's legs, and fall down. Peyton could have stumbled and rolled over for fun and did a little somersault for a 1st down. They were at the 25, only needed 5 yards. He threw it at around the 23 to about a 15, 20-yard throw down the field. Emmanuel was double covered. Luckily, the safety on the route it looked like he was just kind of chasing him. It was kind of funny if you actually look at the replay, where the corner on the route on Emmanuel was pretty close, and close enough to where Peyton threw his fluttered pass because he doesn't have the heat he ever had before, which he hasn't had after the surgery, which never was great of a fastball, but it was good enough. And certainly with his always throwing it before the receiver was ever even around to catch the ball, as in Peyton usually throws the ball before the guy's even there to catch it. As in before the guy turns around for an out route, the ball's already on its way. Well, Peyton didn't do that, and on the fact of the top that he doesn't have the fastball, especially anymore with his legs being hurt, The guy was there enough to break up the pass. And the ball was 15 to 20 yards down the field. Peyton, why aren't you scrambling for a first down? You only have about 5 yards to scramble. You threw it around the 23. You got to get to the 30. There's no one in sight. If Cam Newton, Michael Vick in his prime were there, he probably could have scored. Anyway, so just his decision-making was totally off because of his injuries. He had more time. I heard this from even Wilbon on PTI. Said this exact verbatim, and I said it. He had more time than he thought he had, multiple times. And you see that with quarterbacks rushing themselves. He almost look like a college quarterback. I don't understand what he's going to do. I hope, just for the sake of Peyton, the Broncos, of course, a team that I've loved for over the years, he can recuperate, get his mind, his mentality back to the way it was. He can prepare for each game, because I know he has that. But does he have the capability to go out there and perform each and every week? And that's thus being why even John Elway, other greats, have finally know they had to hang it up because their body couldn't do it each and every week. Can Peyton? If he can, the Broncos, they're like a Ferrari. Who's going to drive it? I mean, the defense and the offense is loaded. That leads us to the coaching carousel with them, Fox being out. We'll get with that in just a moment. And I hate the whole, that's to another thing, I shouldn't say hate, but I dislike how a lot of people with the whole run, they can't find the run-pass balance. Well, early in the year, everyone thought they were on a roll when everyone likes to forget Ronnie Hillman was their running back. He was averaging, I should say, pretty much what C.J. Anderson was, about 150 yards per game rushing and receiving, and they found a good balance throwing for about 350 a game. And then later in the year, when Peyton was hurt, he just couldn't seem to find that balance, as he averaged around 310 yards per game before his first, and that's before his first. I did these numbers before his first injury against San Diego, which was around week 7 or 8. He did have a 400-yard performance against the Patriots, yes, and albeit a loss the next week. So 353 the week after that, 369 the week after that. So how injured was he with that first injury with San Diego? We'll never know. The second one was more apparent. He only averaged right around 200 yards, 2 to 250 per game, especially the wins before that, where you could tell he was maybe almost before that injury to San Diego. He only passed for 179 and 173 yards in both of those wins. They rushed it for about 170 yards per game. And that leads me to this. They averaged 56 yards rushing per game in their losses, 134 in their wins. So they do need to find the balance, certainly as any team really does, between the rushing and passing balance and how to mix in both. Will they do that next year? Will Peyton come back? Will he figure out if he can do that? I don't know. I think they'll have C.J. Anderson. Of course, they'll have Ronnie Hillman in the backfield. So they'll have both guys. So there's 2 running backs, which every team would love. Also, what are you going to do at free agency? I figure they let Wes Welker go. You have other few names, big names, like Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas. As the reports are out, and I figure they do the same thing. One of them are going to get franchised. They'll get the franchise tag on one of them, and the other one they'll actually sign to a deal. And they also have another big name out there, Terrence Knighton, pot roast, as they love to call him, on the defensive line. Certainly you'd love to re-sign him to kind of solidify your front for the next couple of years with Von Miller and, of course, DeMarcus Ware, who they signed last year. Get to the rest of the games, though. Was it or was it not a catch? That is certainly something on the debate here for most people, especially here in Dallas. Boy, they hated that game last week, and I've seen that multiple times, whether it be college or NFL. Guys make a catch very similar to that. I feel as if it's a catch, being that I was a receiver back in my short days in high school where we ran the ball all the time. But I feel the same way. That was a catch. I feel as if, though, in a way, I don't want to say robbed, but then the week before that, there was a terrible, which led to, the ironic weirdness of it all. How the week before, Detroit lost to the Cowboys on a crucial call. And yes, both games, both instances, multiple minutes for both teams to make more, game decisions, as in it doesn't mean as if that was the albeit, as if that was the whole reason the game was won or lost. Yes, it had a lot to do with it, but wasn't the main reason. There were many plays afterwards that could have decided that game as well. Both the Detroit-Dallas game and the Green Bay-Dallas game. Thus being my point, after the catch, say if they do score the touchdown. Well, Green Bay came right down the field. I know they got the ball in great field position, but they did come down the field, ran the rest of the clock off. The Cowboys had no time to pretty much make a move afterward. So you could have said that, well, the Green Bay would have come down, they would have kicked a field goal to win the game. They had enough time. So who knows what would have happened, even if they let the catch stand. They do score a touchdown. Dallas does go on top. Who's to say Green Bay just still doesn't come down and take the lead and win the game? Crazy, crazy weekend, especially that Sunday with that game and then leading to just seeing how Peyton just fell off and the Broncos fell off the map when you figured they were going to win by the opposite score. You figured Denver was going to win 24-13. Well, they don't. So that leads to, of course, the games on Saturday. Ridiculously crazy Patriots-Ravens game. I mean, the Patriots down 14, coming back. The talk afterward, their trick play where they tricked up with their trickery with multiple linemen. Thus being, though, they did say which lineman was eligible, who was not eligible, and tricking the Ravens. And as everyone said, you should have, Mr. Harbaugh. You should have called timeout. You should have set your defense up, seen what was going on. If you were confused yourself, you should have seen something and called timeout immediately. Wasn't called. Play stood. Multiple things happened in that game. Was certainly an interesting game. It just kind of seems to be one of those things where the Patriots just destined to win the Super Bowl this year. They've just kind of figured things out game by game, and that's their thing where it's like Denver's got to figure out their balance. Or to the Patriots, it's so crazy to where they can just go game by game. What they need to do, they will do it to win. Whether they need to run the ball up, they'll run it to win. Whether they needed to throw 45 times, they'll throw it 45 times to win. They kind of figure out what they need to do, whatever game it is. Though be it, of course, all teams will have their games where they just kind of don't show up. But usually the Patriots, especially toward the end of the year, the end of this year, have figured out what they needed to do in the key moments, playing crucial defense in crucial moments. Not playing great defense all the time, but in crucial moments getting great third down stops or goal line stops. Which leads me to, of course, as the Patriots did end up winning that game, coming back and winning. Seahawks looking incredibly good toward the end of the year, coming alive, looking like the Seahawks of last year who destroyed the Broncos in the Super Bowl, which, of course, a lot of people were shocked by. But the Seahawks, especially with the way they've certainly handled themselves over the past 6 to 8 weeks, I think the last 6 weeks of the year, their teams, their defense only allowed right around 8 to 9 points per game. Your last 6 games of the NFL year when it's the most crucial, your defense is only giving up 8 to 9 points per game. That's pretty big and pretty big situations. Now to the coaching carousel, which has been certainly a fun one to say the least. A lot of jobs were open. Now a lot of jobs are getting filled as teams are slowly but surely making the ends of their season, so these coaches can now get interviewed and actually take a position, unlike college ranks where you can just pretty much go take a coach when you want. First up on the list, of course, the latest as of today, the Denver Broncos have hired Gary Kubiak as their new head coach. He was in town yesterday. It was pretty much reported late last night, and really earlier in the week it was kind of weird. On Yahoo there was a link that led you to SB Nation that Gary Kubiak was hired. And I forgot who wrote that article, but it was a little link. When you open it up on Yahoo, it had the, pretty much 1 or 2 sentences saying that they were about to hire Gary Kubiak. Click on the, and then the link was there. Click on the link for more information. Well, when you click on the link, it came up with an error page, that page no longer found or whatever. So I knew almost from the get-go, not kind of seeing that, but just had a feeling that Kubiak was going to be the man. I didn't figure that the Broncos were really going to I knew Dan Quinn, my point being, I knew Dan Quinn was going to the Falcons after Todd Bowles took the New York Jets job, which we'll get to all these in just a moment. Point being, I'm breaking down the Broncos right now, and that after these chain of events, Todd Bowles goes to the Jets, thus being Dan Quinn is certainly now number 1 candidate for the Atlanta Falcons, which certainly seems to be that way. I had a feeling for whatever reason those 2 guys are out. I didn't have a strong case, a strong case for Adam Gase. I didn't think he was, I shouldn't say, because everyone's got to have their time of day. My point being, everyone's got to be a head coach at some point in time. But the point that him and the other guy that were pretty high up on the list, Terrell Austin, the Lions defensive coordinator, just haven't had much coaching experience, and especially in the obviously as a head coach. Neither one of them have been a head coach. They both have only been offensive coordinators for very short periods of time. I should say Adam Gase is the offensive coordinator. Terrell Austin is the defensive coordinator for the Lions, but both of them they've only had coordinator positions for a very slim amount of time. It's not like they were, like, say, Gary Kubiak, where he was an offensive coordinator for the Broncos for 10 years, then a head coach for 10 years. So you get where I'm coming, where with the experience was just, even though Kubiak didn't have the best of records in Houston, well, obviously he was never dealt the best of hands, and a lot of the times when he was expected to win, they didn't do so well. But then the years where it was kind of, they're not going to maybe do so great this year, that they'd make the playoffs that year. So he had a team, but he certainly didn't have a team capable of the Broncos. And I think with his experience, and a lot of people are going to say that the whole friend thing, Elway and Kubiak, and that's one of the other main reasons why he may have gotten it higher. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with it, but a lot of people were kind of maybe timid about my point being that it wasn't the right man for the job. I don't think Adam Gase or Terrell Austin was. I really didn't think that Doug Marrone was another good fit, that he was going to maybe come in, but after he knew Gary Kubiak was coming in, he actually canceled his interview, which was actually supposed to be Saturday. Kubiak's was Sunday. And I think he knew as well that it was going to be Kubiak all along. So we'll see what goes from there. I think it was certainly the right decision. We'll see if Adam Gase, he may go elsewhere. There's reports that he may go and be an offensive coordinator at another team. So we'll see what kind of what he feels like, because he may feel as if he was slighted, didn't get the position. The Broncos, went in another direction instead of letting him elevate and giving him the job. So we'll see what goes there, but I think Gary Kubiak was the right choice. It'll just be on if Adam Gase returns. If not, then you're having to fill two coordinator positions, your defensive and offensive coordinator. I certainly feel that if they can get Adam Gase back with Kubiak, that's going to bring more, it's certainly going to entice Peyton Manning more to come back. Albeit it's all going to still be on he's got to have, like, every year his contract that's in there. He's got to go to the doctor, make sure he can still play. The doctor will give him the okay, and then Peyton's got to give himself the okay. Is he ready to come back? Is he fit to come back? So we'll see exactly where the Broncos go with that, leading to where their former coach went to, the Chicago Bears, which that was pretty much almost a given as soon as he was let go by the Broncos. John Fox is the new head coach for the Chicago Bears, which everyone reported they have a new GM. New GMs usually don't go good with new head coaches, as in first-time head coaches. So it kind of ruled out the possibility for a lot of these first-time head coaches that were up for the running of that position. So John Fox, the new head coach in Chicago. Right before that, the Broncos' former defensive coordinator, position they're going to have to fill now, their defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio, went to Oakland Raiders. The Raiders, they have a new head coach, and we'll see what Del Rio can do with the team. I know they're probably wanting to go maybe more defensive-based, get back to the Gruden years. They've tried to have gone offensive, obviously, lately with a bunch of quarterback busts. Obviously not thinking of the recent quarterback. I'm thinking of about 10 years ago now. And, of course, Jamarcus Russell. And, well, then, just drafting lengthy but fast wide receivers that kind of maybe were just go-route type receivers, do more than just run a go-route. You know when to break down in coverage, and as in when there's a zone, and find a hole and get in there. Obviously, always using your hands, protecting the ball. Just things that they just for whatever reason, they're just not fundamentally sound. It hasn't seemed like of the past few years either. So we'll see if Del Rio can get in there and change that, as he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars before he was with the Broncos. Buffalo Bills, of course, hire Rex Ryan. He goes from the New York Jets to the Buffalo Bills. He stays in conference. That ought to be an interesting matchup each year when they play each other, especially when he goes to New York. So we'll see how the Bills fare with Rex Ryan. I think it could be the right fit for that team. So we'll see where that goes in Buffalo. The Jets, of course, I mentioned earlier, they hired Todd Bowles, former defensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. They also have a new general manager. Of course, They got rid of the general manager and head coach, kind of a whole new start there in New York that I was just talking about with Rex Ryan being gone, and they bring in a new general manager as well, so we'll see what that holds in New York. They go with a defensive coordinator set mind with Rex Ryan to another defensive set-minded Todd Bowles, so we'll see if he can't do something really with that offense, which needs more help than the defense. And the Cowboys have gotten their head coach a new 5-year extension worth $30 million. Jason Garrett will certainly be the coach, at least for the next couple of years. You never know here in Cowboys Nation what's going to happen each and every year. It seems like the coach, whoever it may have been over the past, well, it seems like forever now, they're on the hot seat every year, regardless how they did the year before. I think he certainly has secured himself through next year, depending on how next year goes. You got to have the free agent signing. Will the Cowboys bring back Dez Bryant? And will they bring back DeMarco Murray, the two big names there? I think they certainly will at least, if they can't re-sign both of them, I think they certainly will re-sign one and put the franchise tag on the other, or vice versa. Same kind of situation really lies back there in Denver, which I didn't speak of earlier. The same situation there in Denver where they have to sign Thomas and Thomas. I like to call them Thomasy Thomas. They have Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas coming up on free agent deals this year, and what do they plan on doing with those guys? And one thing that I haven't mentioned before, and certainly you haven't heard mentioned quite a bit, hardly ever, is for people to take less of a contract. And now this happened before, and I know it was done kind of, I shouldn't say in a trickery way, but the New England Patriots and Tom Brady just restructured his contract to where he's going to be making less money this next year. Like, they rescheduled it. I should say they redid his contract to where he's making less money next year. I think he still will, for whatever reason, will still obviously get the money he was supposed to get at the end, but they restructured it to where he's not making much money over the next couple of years, so they can actually now thus bring in more free agents. So not only are they not obviously loaded, they're going to the Super Bowl, but you wouldn't see them of having a lot of big names, but now they have the chance to even bring in more free agents. Yes, they got Darrelle Revis, and they got other people on the defense they brought in last year, and of course now they get to bring in maybe a wide receiver or two on the offensive side to go with your Edelman, your Gronkowski, and the rest of these guys. So we'll see exactly where the Patriots go, and that's my point with the Denver Broncos. Why isn't Peyton Manning restructuring his contract? Peyton Manning and all these quarterbacks that especially Peyton Manning, you want your Super Bowl so bad, Peyton Manning. Why are you not restructuring your contract to where you're making $1 million? Do you really need 18, 19 million next year? Have you not made 15, almost an average of $15 million since you've been in the NFL? 15 times 15 is a lot of money, and you've been in the league more than 15 years now. You're almost in the league for 20 years. I don't feel like doing the math in my head super fast, but you get my point. Peyton Manning should have well over $200 million that he's made in the NFL, plus all the endorsements. So, Peyton, why aren't you restructuring your contract next year to where you're not making hardly anything? Thus, you can not only sign Thomas and Thomas back without having to put a franchise tag on one if you don't want to, but you can then go out and re-solidify your offensive line that you need help with. Maybe go find another real running back, not one of these no-name guys, although C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman are doing a fabulous job. Maybe solidify your defense a little bit more. You really don't have a linebacker. You have great defensive linemen. I'm sorry, but Von Miller is more of a lineman than linebacker. So bring back Pot Roast. He's in a free agent this year. So you got Pot Roast, DeMarcus Ware, you got Von Miller, and then go find you a linebacker to go with those corners and safeties, and you've really solidified your defense. Yes, Danny Trevathan and Brandon Marshall both stepped up, but they both have seemed to be injury-plagued over the last couple of seasons. So maybe you need someone to solidify that position. I just don't get why Peyton's not restructuring his contract. He wants the ring more than anybody out there. Peyton, listen to me. Please, redo your deal. You don't need that much money. Or maybe you do. Maybe you've got a secret gambling problem none of us know about. We will never know about that. Well, maybe we will, but it'll just be a few years from now. Anyway, so the Cowboys, back to them as well. We'll see what they do in the offseason. Of course, bringing Jason Garrett back. The team seems to be happy with Linehan and Marinelli as their coordinators, so I think the right decisions have been made in Dallas finally. I think hopefully Jerry Jones he has his crew. I think this is what he wanted because it's all about what he wants. But he needs to slowly but surely step out of the limelight, let those guys do their jobs because now they are definitely doing their jobs, and let their players get to the next level. And I'm sure they'll find means and money to bring back Dez Bryant and DeMarcus Murray next year to go with you're aging as well, Tony Romo. I mean, that window here in Dallas is very limited as well. Denver, 1 year, maybe max 2 years. Now with Peyton Manning, maybe not even 2 years now, maybe only one because of the injuries this year. Cowboys, you got about 4, I would say, max with Romo. He's had the same he's been injury plagued lately too, and it's not like he's injury plagued at young and gotten better as hasn't had the injuries when he was older. It would be one thing if you got the injuries when you're young and didn't get them when you're older. It's different when you get the injuries when you're older because you can't, your body does not recuperate near as fast, and it's a lot harder to get in each and every week without getting the right reps, the practices that you need. So we'll see exactly what happens with those two squads. And to one of the stories that broke one of the first, head coaching jobs that was open, being that Harbaugh left and they had their falling out. He goes to Michigan to go coach college again. The 49ers get Jim Tomsula to be their head coach. He was the defensive line coach. They were thinking about maybe bringing in Broncos offensive coordinator Adam Gase, to even Jack Del Rio, Dan Quinn from Seattle, their defensive coordinator, but they choose to go in-house. I guess the players seem to like Tomsula, although I don't understand, him not having too much offensive coordinator position before, or defensive coordinator position before, being he was a defensive line coach. Just one of those things where you just, I guess, certainly want to give a guy a chance and see what he can do, but I have a feeling they may be making a new head coaching position in the next couple of years. Couple of jobs still open, as we were talking earlier. Atlanta Falcons, looks like Dan Quinn is going in for a second interview this week. He looks to be the front runner over a few others: Josh McDaniels, Patriots offensive coordinator; Doug Marrone, former Bills head coach; and Terrell Austin, the Lions defensive coordinator. Those are the other candidates that are up for the position, but it looks like Dan Quinn, Seahawks defensive coordinator, will be the new coach for Atlanta, as far as I can tell. And that would be your coaching carousel roundup this week. It certainly has been a fun one. We'll keep you updated on next week's podcast. More should be announced by then. Almost all head coaching positions should be close to being filled next week. On deck, the Ohio State Buckeyes over the Oregon Ducks. Bucks over Ducks, 42-20. It was kind of an overmatched, overpowered Ohio State team over the Oregon Ducks team. And really too much speed. Oregon, you thought maybe might have the advantage coming into it with more speed, really almost maybe even more experience, being that Mariota and all of that team's kind of been around it more often, but everyone kind of seemed to forget about Ohio State and their speed and their experience, as Urban Meyer brought that from Florida to Ohio State. Yes, it wasn't an immediate transfer of jobs, but what he was doing at Florida, he pretty much brought that to Ohio State. And the recruitment that he brought there, and you kind of saw that in the Alabama-Ohio State game in the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State, at times, really completely overmatched Alabama, which was surprising. Maybe Alabama wasn't prepared enough. You can say a lot of things for the SEC, which, of course, being down here in the South, loving the SEC, I can come up with a ton of excuses, but it doesn't matter. Everyone had enough time to prepare for that game. They didn't prepare as Ohio State did, and then Ohio State showed that not only did they prepare more, but they may have shown that they were better athletes and a better team. Now on deck, Cardale Jones, the big man. What is he going to do? Well, he decides to return to Ohio State. Was it the right decision? We'll find out certainly in the next few months. Also, the other side story to that is Braxton Miller going to transfer. There's many options out there. Every day there's a new school on the list, whether it be LSU, Oregon, Florida State, any of those schools you could transfer to. Those seem to be the top three, with Oklahoma, a couple others in the mix, Texas, UCLA. We'll see exactly where he chooses to go. If he does decide to transfer, he'll have 1 year of eligibility left. I mean, he's great quarterback. I mean, he was certainly a great quarterback, experienced quarterback. He has speed. He can certainly run the ball. That's why I think Oregon would be a good fit for him, but he can also throw the ball pretty good. 2013 stats. Heading into this year, he was a Heisman front runner, and last year in 14 starts, or I should say the 2013 season, in his 14 starts, he had around 2,100 passing yards, for 24 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And how about this? He had 1,370 rush yards and 12 touchdowns. So certainly can run the ball, certainly can pass it. So Oregon would certainly, I'm sure, love to have him. With Mariota leaving, could certainly be a good would seem to be a good fit for Miller. Now is what's going to be the deal? Of course, now Cardale Jones does come back. They have JT Barrett. So what will happen there? JT Barrett 6'1", 225 compared to Cardale Jones 6'5", 250. So you know Cardale Jones, the way he played over the past few games, his last 3 games where he started due to the injuries, undefeated, got him to the championship game and won it. He'll certainly get first-team reps. In his 3 starts this year, he had 742 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Only 90 rush yards in those 3 games. He did have a touchdown, so he's not much of a runner. He can run, but he's not the runner that Braxton Miller or J.T. Barrett is. J.T. Barrett started the 12 games this year. He had 2,800 passing yards, 34 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, and ran the ball for 938 yards with 11 touchdowns. So he throws, it seems, throws a little better and throws a little more than Braxton Miller, runs a little less and maybe not as well. But that's your trade-off. They certainly kind of seem to be the same almost quarterback, where one throws a little more and runs a little less, and one does the opposite. And then Cardale Jones seems to be a little bit more, being that he is bigger, of a drop-back quarterback, and that would be the better pro option and better pro fit, run when you need to, and that's what they all teach him. You always want to be looking downfield. You want to keep your eyes downfield, even when you're about to take off to run, and your peripherals need to be that good to not only scan the field, scan the sideline, see where that stick is so you're not running past it if you do decide to throw it, but then take off and run and get 5 yards, 20 yards, 7 yards, 3 yards, whatever it may be, not only that you may need, but can get. He's also the only thing, and what's kind of funny about this, it was mentioned in one of the articles I was reading, he's already older, and that was the reason they were saying for him to leave. That was before he had announced to come back. That was one of the reasons they were saying he needs to go ahead and just leave. He's not only as hot as he's probably ever going to be unless he does this again next year, but he's already older than Manziel and Teddy Bridgewater is. He's older than Johnny Football and Teddy Bridgewater, who are playing in the NFL and started already. Doesn't mean anything, really. He could come back, have a great year next year. If he ends up being the starter, goes pro. But you've seen that time and time again where guys stay a year longer and it just seems to hurt them. Matt Leinart, Sam Bradford. There are a lot of guys that just, not a lot of them, but there are a few. And they're the big, and that's the thing, the spotlight's on you. It's not a fifth-year senior at the University of Houston or Arkansas or a school that's not really completely on the scene. I mean, he might, even if he's a good player, he's not going to be on the scene as a guy that just won the national championship. And all has forgotten his famous tweet from a couple years ago when he was redshirting as a freshman. Here's his tweet. Verbatim. Why should we have to go to class if we came here to play football? We ain't come to play school. Classes are pointless. Not the greatest of grammar used in there either, but also not great integrity, smarts. He did go on to apologize, and of course that was kind of brought up a little bit, not too much recently. That's always kind of overshadowed, but he said he's moved past that, of course, a more grown player now, but anyone's going to say that, especially while redshirting. You're not getting to play. You're watching all these people play. You were just playing last year in high school, and I'm sure he was certainly tearing it up in high school, so he's like, hey, coach, let me get out there. And anyway, I'm sure he wasn't in the best of states, and I think it also said along with it that he just got done making a decently, not a good grade on a test, and he was just upset about it. But still, kind of funny how everyone forgot about that. But still, anyone can certainly move on and grow up from anything they learn. I mean, you look at Cam Newton. I mean, a lot of guys. I mean, everyone makes mistakes when they're younger. I did. Everyone did. On deck now, how about your story of the week? San Bernardino Valley in California. Great little story here. I don't know if you heard about it. Not great. Just kind of lopsidedly ridiculous. How about a 161-2 beatdown in high school basketball? It was in a girls' game, and the coach now has been suspended for 2 games after the victory. Arroyo Valley High School, the girls' coach, Michael Anderson, has now been suspended for 2 games after the latest victory. against Bloomington High. Anderson said he wasn't trying to run up the score or embarrass the opposition. His team had won the 4 previous games by at least 70 points. And Bloomington had already lost the game earlier in the year by 91. That's the team they're playing. He said the game, in quotes, the game just got away from me. I didn't play any starters in the second half. I didn't expect them to be that bad. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. And he says he'd go on and he said if he had to do it again, he'd have played only reserves after the first quarter or I wouldn't have played the game at all. But Bloomington coach Dale Chung completely disagrees. He said he knew what he was trying to do. And also on top of the fact they used a full court press the entire first half, which led to a 400. It might as well have been 400. It was a 104. I keep wanting to say 400. It was a 104-1 halftime lead. 104-1. That was the halftime score. There is your story of the week. My gosh, show some mercy, Coach Anderson. Maybe once do this. You've won the last 4 by 70 at least. Yeah, I think you can play your starters for the first quarter, and then you just need to play reserves the rest of the way. Maybe try to move up. You should be asking your school if we can't play different teams or figuring that out. Give these kids a better opponent. There's not even practice. There's no point to this almost. You're not even getting better. I'm sure in a way you kind of see yourself as maybe you are, but if you're winning by 70 points a game, if not more, you just won a game by 159. You literally they had one point in each half. One free throw. That is it. Did not score a single bucket. Show some mercy. Let them score. You should have, you know what, for fun, the very last minute you should don't even go down and defend, let them get a bucket. Maybe the whole fourth quarter for fun. Hey, let these girls feel good at least. I know we're in that society of hey, but you've already won. The girls are going to lose. There's no coming back for this Arroyo Valley High. You're down 104-1 at halftime. I think the whole second half you shouldn't have played anybody. I think you should have just let it go out there, tell them to literally sit down. Just do whatever you want to do. Don't play basketball. Go get an icy. See how many technicals you can ring up. Go to the fruit stand. Go to the icy stand and get you an icy. Fruit stand like they'd be getting any fruit. Story of the week. There you go. All right, and coming up on deck next week, we have a big show. I don't know how many times I said big, but it's that big. Of course, we'll preview the Super Bowl. That's why. Great game. We'll see what kind of commercials we'll have in store. Of course, we'll have to talk about the Super Bowl and the commercials after that. Tiger, he's returning. He is on deck, literally. He's getting ready to play. He'll play back-to-back weeks coming up. In a couple of weeks, we have to preview that. NCAA basketball, we'll get your feel of that. Hadn't talked about that this year at all. It's getting closer to really deciding who's going to go where and who's going to really be good this year. Who's going to crack that top 25 and teams you can maybe see as making a run like UConn did last year. Of course, now they're into conference play, so we'll certainly have to break down some NCAA basketball next week. Of course, the latest on your coaching situation. Maybe the coaching carousel may be over next week. I don't know. It may not be. But, of course, any other late-breaking stories will keep you filled up on it. Just like a big 44-ounce Coca-Cola Classic from your local 7-Eleven. Thanks, 7-Eleven. I need those. All right. Don't forget, check me out on Yahoo. All right. Don't forget, check me out on... And don't forget to check me out on Twitter, Josh A. Smith 7. You can follow me there at Josh A. Smith 7 and the website, joshsmithblog.com. You cannot forget to get on the site. You blog it, you read it, you comment on it. Let me know how you feel. Let me know what I need to change. I'll do it for you. You need a size 7 or 7.5? Done. Oh, what did you say? You want mustard, not mayo? Let me just recook it for you. All that and much more on deck with Josh Smith.